I've always been fascinated by speedrunning, but more specifically, I really love the really goofy runs that have unconventional rules and are sometimes a little ridiculous. Take minimum captures, for example, where people try to complete Super Mario Odyssey without using the game's main mechanic, Cappy, or the Breath of the Wild speedrun where the goal is to put a stick of butter on a dog. But sadly, one of my favorite games of all time, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, doesn't really have any of these. Pretty much the only speedrun that I would fit in this category is Blue Yourself, where the goal is to hit yourself with a blue shell as fast as possible, but beyond that, they essentially don't exist. So that's why today, I'm going to come up with as many stupid speedruns as possible to try and see if there is truly no more room for them in this game. The first speedrun I came up with is called Robbery %, and the goal is to get to 10 coins exclusively from ones dropped by other players. For this speedrun, there were a few problems to work out before starting. The first one was making sure that I didn't collect any coins that start on the track naturally. This was pretty easy to solve. I just went on to Mute City because there are no coins on the track. Well, none that affect the gameplay at least. Doing this on Mute City also solves the problem of needing to make sure that the CPUs actually have coins to drop, because these panels give them a lot really quickly. I start with 5 coins on versus races, so I decided to just jump off the side of the course at the beginning to get myself down to 0. After that, the only problem left to solve is how do we get people to drop coins as efficiently as possible. At first, I tried just going into the middle of the pack and spamming as many attack items as I could to just brute force it, but the problem was this limited me to only being able to collect the coins of the 5 people in front of me, because if I tried to reverse to get coins, I would get boosted forwards by the spin boost from people hitting me, and the coins would despawn before I could reach them. So I decided to move to the back of the pack and collect all the coins that filtered through. This worked a lot better, and I started being able to collect a lot more coins sooner into the race. After an hour or so, I stopped doing attempts, but I still feel like there is major room for improvement and optimization that I wasn't able to accomplish. Next up is Explode %, where you try to get hit by an explosion as fast as possible. The goal with this one was to initially just try and hit myself with a bomb as soon as I could, but I realized that you could just run into the bomb car on Moonview Highway to get the effect long before it's possible to get one from an item box. This meant that now the point of the run was just getting to this bomb as fast as possible. I did a few runs and was able to get there in just under 7 seconds by using all the mushrooms and taking perfect lines. This next speedrun is called Die %. The goal with this one is to hit yourself with every single self-damaging item in the game as fast as possible. To start, we need to know which items we can actually hit ourselves with. The banana, green shell, bomb, fire flower, and blue shell can all hit you, and as it turns out, you can actually ink yourself with the blooper if you're in first place, so we're counting that too. This speedrun is really luck-based, because not only do you need to get very specific items, you also need to get them soon enough to be able to smuggle both the blue shell and blooper into first, all while hoping that you don't get shocked or have one of the items get stolen by a boo. In all my attempts, I only managed to do this once. There was another time where I got really close, but I couldn't get a fire flower. After a couple hours, I gave up on trying and moved on to the next speedrun, Panel %. On this one, you try to touch every type of panel in the game, boost, glider, and anti-grav, as fast as possible after starting the race. The first course I thought of was Mario Kart Stadium. Every type of panel can be found on this course, and I was able to get all of them in about 20 seconds with a couple tries. After that, I tried GBA Mario Circuit. This course does have all 3, but when I tried it, I completely overshot the anti-grav panel and was forced to back up to actually touch it. I did my best to hit it without going backwards, but I had to slow down so much that I was almost completely stopped. Despite this, I was still able to finish the run in about 20 seconds, the same amount of time that it took on Mario Kart Stadium. Toad's Turnpike also has all the panels we need. The anti-grav panel can be found on the entrance to the drivable walls, the glider panel can be found on the ramp truck, and finally there are these boost panels on both the walls and the truck. My plan to get all 3 as fast as possible went like this. First, drift my back tire over this anti-grav panel to get it without having to go onto the wall. Then just go as fast as I can to this truck and go up it to finish the run. This run was pretty short, so I was able to optimize it really fast. Pretty much the only trick to speed it up was getting as little of my back tire on the panel as possible to be able to take optimal lines. I got it down to under 9 seconds, which I thought was going to be the undisputed fastest method until I remembered that N64 Rainbow Road actually has an anti-grav panel panel at the very beginning for some reason, which, combined with the boost and glider panels very early on, allowed for a run in just 6.8 seconds instead of 8.5. I couldn't find any better methods for this challenge, so I moved on to circuit percent, where the goal is to complete all of the circuit tracks as fast as possible. This one isn't too complicated, it's just menu navigation, item luck, and going fast. I did 3 runs of this, and my time was pretty consistent across all the runs, only deviating by about 30 seconds. The next speedrun, drown percent, is about getting Lakitu to pick you up while underwater. When I say underwater, I don't mean getting picked up in the sort of water that causes Lakitu to immediately pick you up. I mean the type of water that makes the propeller come out of the back of your cart. I started looking into it and was surprised at how difficult it is to find places where Lakitu will actually pick you up while underwater, because most of the underwater sections are pretty closed in. Falling down in the cave section on Dolphin Shoals worked, and so did going into these arrows on Piranha Plant Cove, but both of these come pretty late into their respective courses, so I kept looking for an even better method. And then I finally found it, Boo Lake. Boo Lake has these walls at the start that prevent us from driving straight off, but if you go backwards, you can make it into unrestricted water pretty easily and get picked up by Lakitu in under 5 seconds. With that record set, it was time to move on to collision percent. The goal of this one is simple: run into every single driver in the race as fast as possible. My first idea for this was to just get on a course like DK Mountain, go through the cannon glider, and then just sit at the exit point and wait for all the CPUs to just drop down on top of me. This also saves the problem of having to keep track of which CPUs I've run into already, because they can only go through the glider once. The problem with this is that there's a little bit of variation of where the cannon glider drops you off, and although the difference is small, it was still enough to let some of the players slip past me. After realizing that this plan had almost zero chance of working, I just resorted to setting the CC to 50 and trying to go as fast as I could before they break formation and cause me to forget which ones I still needed to hit. Surprisingly, this worked really well, and I was able to get them all really consistently and really quickly. I changed my cart combo to one with a much higher weight stat so that I would get bumped out of the way a lot less, and that also improved things. The final speedrun of this video wasn't actually created by me, but instead by my friend Patrick, who suggested it when I told him that I was making this video. The speedrun is called Hell Percent, and believe me, it lives up to that name. The rules are as follows: 50cc, easy CPUs, all 48 base game courses, lightning and blue shells only, motion controls enabled, no hopping, no tricking, no using items, smart steering enabled, auto acceleration disabled with the worst inward drifting bike combination, which is Bowser, Master Cycle, metal tires, and super glider. I got settled in, set up the rules, and started the run. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into when I started this speedrun. This was just pure boredom and pain the entire time. Smart steering slows you down enough near the edges of the roads that it was nearly impossible to get the mini turbos that just happen naturally by steering, which are already made scarce by the fact that I'm on 50cc. Additionally, there would be times when I'd see a new shortcut that I want to take, but smart steering has other ideas and just yanks me out of the way. Motion controls weren't too much of an issue. By far the worst part, however, was my cart combination, combined with the relentless pounding of blue shells and shocks. The acceleration on this thing is so terrible that once I got hit, it would take me forever to get back up to full speed. In fact, the only redeeming factor of this entire setup was that due to combos with low acceleration tending to have a really high invincibility stat, I was able to dodge blue shells with iframes long after it felt like it should be possible. But finally, after a grueling 4 hours and 14 minutes, I crossed the finish line on Big Blue, completing the run. Now that all of my runs are done, do I think that any of these could actually be interesting to grind out and try to optimize? Well, the problem with these is that they all rely on just finding the best setup for them rather than racing optimally. And once these setups are found, the category is effectively dead in a couple attempts. Robbery percent is really interesting, and I could definitely see a lot of different strategies that you could use for it. I feel like I've only barely scratched the surface as far as methods go, so I would definitely consider putting more time into optimizing it. Collision percent could probably be done a bit faster by playing on 200cc, but it would require you to be able to remember exactly which players you still need to hit, because they would get mixed up really fast. Circuit percent is pretty basic as far as speedruns go, but it's really good middle ground as far as length goes, not being so short as a single course time trial, but not being as long as a 48 or 96 courses run. Die percent, as I mentioned before, is really luck based, so much so to the point where it becomes a challenge to even do do, much less speedrun. Personally, I don't ever want to have to try this speedrun again, because it was so much of a pain having to completely restart the versus race every single time that I didn't get perfect items, which only happens about 0.3% of the time, or about 1 in every 330 runs. Hell percent was just awful, and it's completely boring the entire way through. Luckily, I only had to do 48 of the tracks, because that's the max that Mario Kart will let you do in a single versus race. That being said, if this video gets 10,000 likes, I'll do a full 8-hour, 96-course Hell percent run with both the base game and DLC tracks when I hit 100,000 subs. So subscribe if you want to see more of my suffering.